North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. What do we do here? We report the news. Honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary. That is not the news. That is just what I think. And by the way, my opinion is just as valuable as yours. So by all means, share it. That's why we debate. So it's news, analysis, commentary, and debate. It is the Wells Report, and I want to thank you very much for being a part of our broadcast. If you're watching this show on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, you will note that I am wearing a T-shirt today. I am going to play drums tonight with the band I'm in, the traditional blues band. That's going to be happening at the Dream Tacos in Bedford, Texas. Now, if you're Jan Thompson, who lives in London, she's probably not going to travel in to get tacos in at the Dream Tacos, although they are delicious. Okay, I mean, great place to eat dinner. So I keep trying to figure out why we don't do this gig on Tuesdays. Because it would be Taco Tuesday with a traditional blues band. I mean, think about that. That really flows. But I guess we're just going to have to make do with Taco Thursday tonight at the Dream Tacos. So anyway, I'm wearing a concert shirt from one of my son Corey's old bands, which is Falling Through April. And quite a very, very successful band in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so anyway, I'm wearing this. So I'm wearing a T-shirt, knock some of the polish off because I'm going to be playing drums tonight, blah, blah, blah. Speaking of knocking things off, I am someone who believes that if you have a position of public trust, you have a fiduciary obligation to operate to the benefit of the people who gave you that trust. And that is one of the major problems with American government right now. The people that are running American government believe that the country belongs to them and that they are empowered by the voters to do whatever it is they think is necessary to be able to, shall we say, fundamentally change our nation. Those are words that have been used by politicians in the open. When you start thinking about the greatest nation in the history of the human endeavor, who is it that's going to step up and say, gosh, you know what? This nation is in need of fundamental change. Well, somebody that doesn't believe that the nation is the best nation on earth, and that's self-evident. What we do in the United States of America is, and has, saved the world on numerous occasions. And why it is that there are people that seek leadership opportunities here in these United States so they can turn this country into something else, that has always baffled me. And so what I try to do is I try to make sure that those people are illuminated. And that is something that we're going to do right this minute. When COVID-19 happened in these United States, the actual news reporting that I did on this broadcast, I think, was stellar. We knew that there was something different about this particular virus, and we said so. We said, no, this isn't a bird flu thing. This is serious. We got to pay attention to this one. And I started, and I was criticized for this, by the way. I started covering the COVID-19 pandemic, even though it wasn't really a pandemic at that time. I started covering it every single day. I brought up the statistics from the CDC. And after about 60 days, the CDC started playing around with the numbers. Because I had actually been reporting those numbers, I knew that the numbers had been changed. And I said so. I reported, I don't know what the CDC is doing, but they're not reporting the numbers that we need. And I told them what numbers, I told you what numbers we were reporting. Had to do with caseloads and so on and so on. And we were talking about caseloads and deaths, and we were comparing those statistics. And we had come up with a death rate for COVID-19 at about 0.03%. And we started contrasting that with other death rates that were far higher. And the president of the United States at the time, Donald Trump, started saying, okay, this is something we have to pay attention to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what ended up happening is that the mainstream media and the deep state started working at cross purposes with President Trump regarding COVID-19. And because of the political aspects of it, in fact, the Democrat Party in the House of Representatives, because they had taken over charge of the leadership of the House, what they were saying is that anything that President Trump had said, even if it agreed with them, was wrong. And the mainstream media picked that up. And it turned out to be chaotic. And we wound our way through that entire thing. And at the end of all of it, I realized the CDC was no longer a public health organization. It was a political action committee using public health as a way to push propaganda. And I reported that too. Jesse says she's judging me for not wearing a collared shirt. Ah, come on. It's a concert shirt. It's cool. Anyway, I said that the CDC had abdicated its responsibilities to public health in favor of politics. Well, guess what we found out today? It wasn't just with COVID-19. This might well make you really mad, because it made me really mad when I read about it. This being reported from Fox News. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention removed statistics on defensive gun use in the United States following pressure from gun control activists. The stats sourced from a CDC Commission study finding that instances of defensive gun use occur between 60,000 and 2.5 million times per year. References to that study were deleted from the site following private meetings with gun control advocates in 2021. This according to emails obtained and published by The Reload Show. That 2.5 million number needs to be killed, buried, dug up, killed again, and buried again, said Mark Bryant, executive director of the Gun Violence Archive, writing to the CDC in one of the emails. It is highly misleading. It is used out of context, and I honestly believe it has zero value, even as an outlier point in honest DGU discussions. And while that very small study by Gary Kleck has been debunked repeatedly by everyone from all sides of the issue, it still remains canon by gun rights folks and their supporting politicians, and is used as a blunt instrument against gun safety regulations every time there's a state or federal level hearing, said Bryant's email. Put simply, in the time that study had been published as a CDC study, gun violence prevention policy has ground to a halt, in no small part because of the misinformation that small study provided. Bryant was among several gun control advocates to meet virtually with CDC officials regarding the data. Senator Dick Durbin reportedly facilitated the meetings through his office. The emails show that CDC officials initially resisted removing the reference. Dr. Deb Horry, that's Houry, the CDC's acting principal deputy director, argued that Bryant's GVA inspected only a very small subset of people who have used guns defensively, adding that it does not include individuals who might have used guns defensively but not reported this use to law enforcement. A very small subset of people who used guns defensively, adding that it does not include individuals who might have used guns defensively but did not report that to the law enforcement. Houry or Horry, I think it's probably Houry, let's just say that, because the other one's explained that a situation in which a person brandished a firearm to prevent a conflict would not register under Bryant's metrics unless the person reported it to the police. Nevertheless, the CDC later acquiesced to Bryant following an online meeting with him and others on September 15th, 2021, according to the Reload. We are planning to update the fact sheet in early 2022 after the release of new data, said Beth Reimels, the Associate Director for Policy Partnerships and Strategic Communications at the CDC's Division of Violence Prevention, writing in a subsequent email. We will also make some edits to the content we discussed that I think will address the concerns that you and other partners have raised. The CDC reportedly did not consult the study's author, Florida State University Emeritus Professor Gary Kleck, prior to removing his study. CDC is just aligning itself with gun control advocacy groups, Kleck told the outlet. It's just saying we're their tool and we will do their bidding, and that is not what a government agency should do. The CDC did not respond to a request for comment from Fox News. They cannot respond to anybody on this particular topic for any reason. The reason is they were caught red-handed using their government power to forward the needs of a special interest group over the reality over the reality of their own research study. When I say reality, I can just say the statistics found in their own research study. And the person that's throwing shade on that particular study is discussing methodology. I mean, that's very, very simple. That's very simple. Is this study peer reviewed? Is this study actual science? The answer is yes. Both answers are. But the thing about it is that is contrary, again, contrary to the political narrative at large. And the CDC changed itself to reflect the political narrative instead of the researched reality. So they go with this gun control advocacy group over their own research. They go to the teachers' unions over their own medical knowledge. They do these things based on a political imperative as opposed to an honest reality. This is why, this very reason is why 71% of Americans still believe the biggest problem in the United States is the government. That was from Gallup research yesterday. This is absolute, irresponsible, malign activity on the part of the government. This is not what we pay our government for. This is not what this government should be doing. This government should be honestly, especially the CDC, should be honestly reporting fact and let the politics and the special interest groups fend for themselves. Don't you agree? Telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. There's more. It's next. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. So, the CDC has apparently been caught red-handed, distorting results of their own survey regarding the defensive use of handguns in the United States, or weapons in general in the United States. They made the changes in their own reporting of this particular topic because of pressure they received from gun control advocates. Just like the changes they made in government policy regarding public health over in the COVID years, because they interacted with the teachers' unions. The CDC is not a public health organization. It is a propagandist political tool. It needs to be disbanded immediately. There needs to be a public health organization that does nothing more than report fact, that is insulated from special interest groups. What we need actual government that works to the benefit of the people of the United States. And frankly, knowing that more people are using weapons for defensive uses, self-defense purposes, is dramatically essential to this society. To somehow keep all this stuff down does not let the word go out from this time and place to those people that would use weapons in crimes, that they stand a far, far better chance of losing their lives because of defensive gun use than they are aware of at this moment. It's because the government of the United States is keeping that information from we, the people of the United States, based on political pressure from these advocacy groups, these special interest groups. That is just plain corruption. It's not just COVID, but the CDC has talked about HIV, avian flu, etc. What do I always say? What does Jess always say? Statistics are easily manipulated and cannot be trusted. There are lies, there are damn lies, and there are statistics. That's Mark Twain. What a bunch of horse hockey. How do they ever expect us to believe anything they say? Exactly. How do we expect them? How do they expect us? Or how should we expect to believe anything they say? The answer is we can't, especially where weapons are concerned. Because these same leftist gun control activists actually got a Border Patrol agent killed. Brian Terry was killed by a weapon that was allowed to be sold into Mexico through a straw purchase in an effort to use those straw purchases of weapons sold in the United States and found in Mexico as a precursor to gun control legislation. That was done during the Obama administration. And it got somebody killed. The people of the United States must have better governance. We, the people of the United States, need to take a far stronger role in our own governance. We should all demand the immediate dissolution of the CDC. If they're going to be a political action committee, then so be it. But don't take a dime of public money to do it. I mean, think about that. I mean, that's just one aspect of this. Remember, the CDC abdicated its responsibilities for public health statistics to Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, because they did not want to be at odds with Democrat Party leadership, people like Anthony Fauci and all those people involved in government manipulation of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so they just sat it out. And now what they're doing is lying to us. They're actually propagandizing public health data. There's more on this topic. We're going back to September of this year for the largest gun use survey ever taken, and we'll report it next on the Wells Report. Stay where you are. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us today. Reported by Fox News and numerous other sources, the CDC buckled to pressure from gun control advocates to remove information regarding the defensive use of firearms in the United States. The research project was commissioned by the CDC. It was vetted by the CDC, and then it was edited and then dismissed by the CDC based on political pressure from gun control advocates. The CDC is worse than useless. The CDC is a political action committee. It is not a public health organization. When you start thinking about the defensive use of handguns, there is a direct link to the amount of crime using handguns, to the number of stories that people who are trying to commit crimes with handguns get blasted into atoms by people who refuse to be either robbed or lose their car or be threatened or what have you. The people that are using weapons in these crimes are less likely to use weapons if they think they could get shot. And when the government of the United States hampers the reporting of defensive handgun use, these guys think that they're a lot safer than they actually are, thereby contributing to more gun crime and more gun violence. In other words, it's a manipulation. At the very most charitable way of explaining it, it is an unintended consequence. A more realistic way would be it's a manipulation of society for political use in an effort to disarm the people of the United States for political reasons. There should be no effort on the part of the government to do any of that. The Second Amendment is plain. It's plain. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's over right there. But the political aspect of all of this refuses to stop being anti-American, which is exactly what this is. It's horrendous. It is awful. All right, let me move over here and let me share something with you. The largest and most comprehensive survey of American gun owners ever conducted suggests that the people of the United States use firearms in self-defense about 1.7 million times per year. That, by the way, is beyond the high end of the research project that CDC edited and then did away with. But it is typical. It also confirms that AR-15 style rifles and magazines hold more than 10 rounds. Frequent targets of gun control legislation are in common use for lawful purposes, which the Supreme Court has said is the test for arms covered by the Second Amendment. The online survey, which was conducted by Sentiment in February and March of 2021, was based on a representative sample of 54,000 adults, 16,708 of whom were registered gun owners or were gun owners. Georgetown University political economist William English, who commissioned the survey as a part of a book project, presented its major findings in a recent paper available on the Social Science Research Network. In other words, it's peer-reviewed. The overall gun ownership of adults, estimated by the survey's 32%, is consistent with research from Gallup and Pew Research Center. So is the finding that rates vary across racial and ethnic groups. It was 25% among African Americans, 28% among Hispanics, 19% among Asians, 34% among whites. Men accounted for 58% of gun ownership. Because of the unusually large sample, the survey was able to produce state-specific estimates that are apt to be more reliable than previous estimates. Gun ownership rates range from 16% in Massachusetts and Hawaii to more than 50% in Idaho and West Virginia. The survey results indicate that Americans own 415 million firearms, including 171 million handguns, 146 million rifles, 98 million shotguns. 30% of respondents reported they had ever owned an AR-15 or similar rifles, which are classified as assault weapons under several state laws and a proposed federal ban. Such legislation also commonly imposes a limit on magazine capacity, typically 10 rounds. Nearly half the respondents, 48%, said they had never owned magazines that could hold more than 10 rounds. So in other words, 30% of the respondents said that they had never owned AR-15s and that they had never owned magazines that could hold more than 10 rounds. Those results underline the practical challenges that legislators face when they try to eliminate assault weapons or large capacity magazines. The survey suggests that up to 44 million AR-15 style rifles and up to 542 million magazines with capacities exceeding 10 rounds are already in circulation. Those are upper bound estimates, since people who report that they've never owned such rifles or magazines or that they have ever owned such rifles or magazines have subsequently sold them. But even allowing for some double counting, these numbers suggest how unrealistic it is to suppose that bans will have a significant impact on criminal use of the targeted products. At the same time, widespread ownership of those products by law-abiding Americans make the bans vulnerable to constitutional challenges. Two-thirds of the respondents who reported owning AR-15 style rifles said they used them for recreational target shooting. Half mentioned that hunting was why they used them, and a third mentioned competitive shooting. 62% they used such rifles for home defense. 35% cited defense outside the home. Politicians who want to ban those rifles insist they're good for nothing but mass murder. Not correct. Owners of large capacity magazines likewise cited a variety of lawful uses. Recreational target shooting, 64% was the most common, followed by home defense, 62%. Hunting, 47%, defense outside the home, 42%, and competitive shooting, 27%. Politicians who favor a 10-round limit argue that no one except criminals and police officers really need larger magazines. Yet respondents described various situations based on their personal experiences where it would have been useful for defensive purposes to have a firearm with a magazine capacity in excess of 10 rounds. These ranged from muggings and home invasions by multiple attackers to encounters with wild animals. Maybe these gun owners were wrong to think the ability to fire more than 10 rounds without reloading was important in those situations, but judging from the responses that English quotes, the person that was discussing this, they had cogent reasons for believing it. Bans on large capacity magazines routinely exempt current and retired police officers on the theory that they are especially likely to face threats, such as multiple assailants, that may require more than 10 rounds. It's strange credulity to suggest that ordinary citizens never face such threats. Correct. And this survey provides further reason to doubt that assumption. 31% of gun owners said they had used a firearm to defend themselves or their property, often on multiple occasions. As in previous research, the vast majority of incidents, 82%, did not involve firing the weapon, let alone injuring or killing the attacker. In more than 4/5 of the cases, respondents reported that brandishing or mentioning a firearm was enough to eliminate the threat. That reality helps explain the wide divergence in estimates of defensive gun uses. The self-reports of gun owners may not be entirely reliable, since they could be exaggerated, mistaken, or dishonest. But limiting the analysis to cases in which an attacker was wounded or killed, or to incidents that were covered by newspapers or reported to the police, is bound to overlook much more common encounters with less dramatic outcomes. Yeah, and let's look at it this way. The latest FBI crime stats, eliminated most large cities from their reports because the cities just didn't respond. Meanwhile, the crime evident in Chicago and New York and San Francisco and Philadelphia and Los Angeles, all of these places, San Diego, all these places are having huge crime problems, but we don't have official FBI statistics because the cities just didn't report it to the FBI because it was voluntary. So, in other words, crime is much more prevalent than we are allowed to be aware of. And defensive use of weaponry by law abiding citizens is far more prevalent than we're allowed to be aware of. Both of these problems emanating from the government of the United States. This is outrageous. It is outlandish. It is above and beyond the pale. That we have this ridiculous mess that we're dealing with at this particular moment. Actual government agencies playing politics with reality should tell you everything you need to know about our government and the people that are actually taking part in it. I have been telling you and telling you and telling you and telling you that this government honestly believes that we work for them and not the other way around. I have been telling you that we need to get these people out of office. Well, here's another reason why. They just plain lied to us. They lied to our faces. They ignore reality in favor of politics. That is always disastrous. There's never a time when fairy tales told and spun by politicians has ever made a better country. Ever. That we, the people of the United States, find ourselves in a position where these anti-American pressure groups have more access to the government than we do is again a self-evident pathology that must be taken care of immediately. What are we waiting for? I don't know what it takes. I just don't know what it takes for the American people to realize that everything that I'm saying is absolutely true. The summer of 2020 was nothing more than a cavalcade of politically and media-generated public unrest that cost hundreds of people their lives, billions of dollars of property damage. And yet there are no summer of 2020 congressional hearings. No, but there is a January 6th hearing. After the hundreds of BLM riots, the one riot that occurred at the Capitol building, that has essentially just rendered that entire summer of politically fueled unrest and media fueled unrest as moot. 15,000 people go to the Capitol. Over 14,000 of them just stand around. 800 of them are arrested. Many of them are put in jail without swift justice. And some of them are indeed going to jail for a long time. But this is what we have when we have political control of law enforcement. And like I said, I don't know what this government needs to show you. After the January 6th riots, where there was National Guard personnel available before January 6th. Afterwards, we had razor wire encircling the Capitol building. 26,000 troops with real weapons of war pointed at us. These people aren't playing around. All the while, they are working to disarm us as a matter of governmental effort. This is not conspiracy theory. This is actually following the facts to a logical conclusion. It is outrageous. It is outrageous. And oh, by the way, there is more, not on this particular topic, but on another one that involves basically the government running off with itself. We'll have that for you coming up in just a couple of moments. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. Why is it that our government gives more access to politically friendly pressure groups than it does the people of the United States, all the while ignoring the Constitution as they do it? Back with more in a moment. Stay there. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. The Biden administration is working on trying to come up with something regarding maritime law that you need to be aware of. Frank Hugelmeyer is a guy that says this particular attempt to regulate American maritime law would be the greatest regulatory overreach in history. This is a proposal from the Biden administration to limit the speed of all motorboats over 35 feet from Florida to Massachusetts. Not only are they creating a serious safety issue, they're creating a massive negative economic impact. Hugelmeyer is president of the National Marine Manufacturers Association, is just one of a growing number of voices expressing outrage over a proposal put forward by the U.S. Commerce Department under the auspices of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's stupid, said Jeff Angers, the president of the Center for Sports Fishing Policy. It's not what government is supposed to do. The far-reaching regulation would restrict speeds to 10 knots or 11.5 miles per hour for all boats over 35 feet for up to 7 months out of the year and up to 100 miles out at sea for most of the East Coast. The purpose is to prevent boats from hitting an endangered right whale. In an email to Fox News, an NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration spokesperson, pointed out there are only 350 right whales left in the entire ocean. The rule is designed to risk the mortalities from vessel strikes and afford the species a greater opportunity to recover. The statement admitted, however, there have only been 5 deadly whale strikes by boats between 35 to 65 feet in length in the last 15 years. By the way, in case you're wondering, boats over 65 feet already have speed restrictions. It's ridiculous, added Angers, who pointed out there's less than a 1 in a million chance of a fishing boat hitting a whale. Based on actual interactions between recreational boats and right whales, the proposed restrictions are unjustifiable, ineffective, and unnecessary. It's also dangerous, said Chris Edmondson, the president of the Boat Owners Association of the U.S. Edmondson said most boats can't get on a plane if they're going under 10 knots. A plane is a speed at which the bow of the boat lowers in order to cut through oncoming waves. In other words, the boat is actually on a plane. It's bouncing over the top of the water as opposed to a displacement hull, which is pushing itself through the water. Okay? Naval architecture. The boats are designed to ride on top of the waves. This is going to make them wallow in the waves, up and down, side to side, pitching. It's going to be hard to maintain control. You can take waves over the side. He said larger boats are especially at risk going through channels near shore. They can't maintain steerage at 10 knots. If you're going that speed, you're going to run aground. Safety is also a huge control for pilot boat captains like Trey Thompson. The crew will be thrown around, tossed around, and injured, he said, at the stern of one of his pilot boats speeding at 35 knots out of the port at Savannah, Georgia. If we run at low speeds, any side swell is going to make these boats roll. His job is to help commercial vessels navigate from 20 miles out to sea to Savannah's inland shipping channels. In the past year, Thompson purchased 2 new 64-foot pilot boats. This boat we're standing on is purpose-built for this job. It was delivered 8 months ago. I have a second one under construction now. He said neither can operate safely at 10 knots. That's $13 million worth of pilot boats that will be unusable. Thompson also predicts the rule will cripple port traffic. The port will be closed any day it's rough or windy, and not just this port, all the ports on the East Coast. He pointed out there's never been a confirmed whale strike in a federal channel. This is the government getting involved where they don't need to be. And that, by the way, is that this Thompson guy is not the only one that's fearing economic catastrophe. This overreach is going to basically will all but halt fishing off the East Coast of the United States. It will just keep people from fishing. He points out there are 9 million anglers who fish the eastern coastline. Instead of getting into a fishing destination in an hour, you're going to take something that's going to take 3 to 4 hours both ways. A day trip becomes impossible. It takes that long. They're just not going to go. If they don't go, they don't buy product. If they don't buy boats. They don't buy fuel. They don't buy anything that goes with that. It hurts the economy. It will devastate the industry. Bob Healy says he understands this. He's standing next to a half-finished 55-foot motorboat in a boat factory on the Jersey Shore. Healy has run Viking Yachts, a third-generation boat building company out of New Gretna. Boat building is one of the few industries that are dominated by American companies with American factories. All but one of the boats Viking makes today are over 35 feet, and most fall between 35 and 65 feet. Healy says no one is going to want to buy a boat that size if they can only go 11 miles an hour for half the year. Why are politicians telling maritime experts how to handle their boats? I'll tell you why. Because we've elected the wrong politicians. Again. That is the first hour of the Wells Report in the can. I want to thank you very much for being a part of our broadcast. Coming up in just a couple of seconds, when the Surgeon General of Florida said there are problems with mRNA vaccines that are causing heart troubles, everybody said, "Oh no, you're mistaken," so on and so on. Well, there's another doctor from another country saying the same thing. What is that story? Well, that's how we start hour number 2 of the Wells Report. I'll see you in just a few more minutes. So there you go. Isn't that amazing? Just incredible. Back with more in just a second. Thank you. North to south, coast to coast, excuse me, around the world. This is the Wells Report, and it's also mountain cedar allergy. Yeah. Because of my voice lessons taken and given to me by Marjorie Albee, I move a lot of air when I use my voice, and occasionally when my windpipe is angry because of mountain cedar pollen, it makes me cough a lot. This is the Wells Report. What do we do here? We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. In short, we de-propagandize the news. And as we discovered last hour, there's a whole lot of propaganda going on. It's awful and it's terrible. And we're reporting it because you need to know about it. It's horrendous, in fact. And we had better get this right. Anyway, that being said, there is breaking news. The murder trial of former Fort Worth police officer Aaron Dean has just come back with a verdict. He has been found guilty of manslaughter. We are currently watching the live feed. I can show this to you. I'm going to show this to you because you know we're going to try to go to this if indeed it becomes real. What we'll do is we'll go to this and let you hear what these people have to say as we cover this. So we're waiting for more information on all of it, and we'll have it for you as soon as it becomes available here on the Wells Report. So we were talking a little bit about something that has been talked about a lot, and that is the safety of mRNA vaccines. Hang on a second. Hold on. Because of my fancy moving around with my show content, I accidentally dumped a piece of information that you need to have. So, okay, here we go. All right. So, a Florida attorney general a while back reported that he said mRNA vaccines are unsafe and linked to deaths from myocarditis. What is that? It is different than pericarditis. The pericardium is a membrane that encases your heart. When it becomes inflamed, that's pericarditis. Actual inflammation of heart muscle is myocarditis. And the Florida Surgeon General, Joseph Ladapo, has been very, very open in his criticism of mRNA vaccines. He says they're unsafe and linked to deaths from myocarditis. The quote, mRNA COVID-19 vaccines are far less safe than any vaccines widely used. When does sanity return to science? Why do scientists breathlessly defend this technology? Hundreds of anti-vaccine enthusiasts commented in support. Ladapo claims a new study of 35 deaths out of Heidelberg, Germany is consistent with the results of a Florida analysis of deaths. The small Germany study showed 5 out of 35 people who died within 20 days of a COVID vaccine had myocarditis listed as a cause of death. So he's doubling down on this on social media. By the way, his research was shut down by Twitter and other social media places. I wonder what they're going to do with this. This was published yesterday. This is coming from the Epoch Times out of Australia. Melanie Leffler, a mother of 2 in Sydney, Australia, had 4 COVID-19 vaccines on November 19th, 2022, after coming down with a sore throat and runny nose. She tested positive for COVID. She said goodnight to her family, her husband, Mick Hogan, and their 2 daughters, Clemmy and Lottie. They would never speak to her again. Although she didn't seem particularly sick, the 39-year-old healthcare worker died in her sleep that night. Even though she was quadruply vaccinated, a December 3rd article about her death described it as a COVID tragedy. 18-year-old Australian Monica Eskandar could not wait to take her end-of-the-year exams. Instead, Eskandar was rushed to the hospital with severe chest pains. The pain, according to reporting by MSN, started hours after she received a COVID-19 booster. Actually, a vaccine. Doctors diagnosed Eskandar with COVID-related pericarditis. Pericarditis is a condition that involves inflammation of the tissues lining the heart. Eskandar's symptoms were so severe she was not able to sit for her exams. Ironically, the reason she got a COVID-19 vaccine in the first place was so she could take those exams. They were mandated by the test givers. A growing body of peer-reviewed scientific evidence is linking heart issues with mRNA vaccines. So much so, the CDC and other government authorities in the U.S. and around the world now recognize COVID-19 vaccines as causing myocarditis, heart inflammation, which is considered more severe than pericarditis because it causes inflammation to the heart muscle directly. In June of 2022, the FDA's Tom Shimabukuro, I said it right, what do you know? MD, MPH, MBA, identified as part of the CDC COVID-19 Vaccine Coordination Unit, reported, quote, current evidence supports a causal association between mRNA COVID-19 vaccination and myocarditis and pericarditis. Remember, we were hearing about these high school athletes that were coming down with both of these conditions because of their COVID-19 shots? And how they were set aside as, it's just a blip. Well, not so much a blip anymore. 6 months later, there's been a total of 35,718 cases of myocarditis, pericarditis reported to the government's Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. After witnessing as many as 70 cases of vaccine-related heart conditions similar to Eskandar's, Australian cardiologist Dr. Ross Walker is now saying publicly he believes there should be a ban on the use of mRNA booster vaccines. According to Walker, the mRNA vaccines are very pro-inflammatory. He contends the Australian Technical Advisory Group on Immunization should never have mandated our mRNA vaccines in the first place. Quote, I've seen many people getting vaccine reactions who get symptoms for about 3 to 6 months afterwards. I've seen between 60 and 70 patients in my own practice over the past 12 months who have had similar reactions. Those reactions have included shortness of breath, heart palpitations, and chest pain. Eskandar said that even though her symptoms began immediately after the vaccine, doctors originally denied the connection, telling her it only happens to teenage boys. You can't breathe. You can't sit. You can't lay down. It's horrible. You actually feel like you're having a heart attack. That's because the same myocardia that is involved in a heart attack is also involved in myocarditis. It is exactly like having a heart attack, except there is no heart damage. It is just inflammation. It's outrageous. After conducting a thorough review of scientific evidence, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, the Florida Surgeon General, declared his state no longer recommends any COVID-19 vaccines for men under 39 because of safety concerns. Doctors Walker and Ladapo are not the only medical professionals voicing concerns about safety, efficacy, and necessity of the COVID-19 vaccines, especially for children and young adults. Among the doctors who have called for the COVID-19 vaccine campaigns to be halted is Japanese cardiovascular surgeon Dr. Kenji Yamamoto. In a letter published in a peer-reviewed journal, Virology, Yamamoto argued the COVID-19 booster shots are not safe. In particular, Yamamoto voiced concern over an adverse effect of the vaccine known as vaccine-induced immune thrombotic thrombocytopenia. Excuse me for just a moment. If you're watching, you saw what I did there. Not only that, but since the administration of the vaccine, Yamamoto has seen an increase in the risk of infection among his patients at the Okamura Memorial Hospital in Shizuoka, Japan. Specifically, he cites many of his patients have contracted severe infections due to inflammation after heart surgery. Yamamoto believes his patients' suppressed immunity is a result of COVID 19 vaccination. Several high profile medical doctors themselves have experienced severe side effects after being vaccinated. Vaccine researcher Dr. Gregory Poland from Rochester, Minnesota, has been struggling with life debilitating tinnitus. That's when your ears ring, so you can't really hear anything. Belgian immunologist, whom The Atlantic described as, quote, one of Europe's best known champions of medical research, Michael Goldman, is now battling lymphoma. He had devastating side effects after his third Pfizer vaccine: severe night sweats, exhaustion, engorged lymph nodes. A scan taken after the vaccine revealed the 67-year-old had a barrage of new lesions, like someone had set off a fireworks display inside his body. Goldman suspected the COVID booster made him sicker. His brother is also a doctor, as well as the head of nuclear medicine at the Université Libre de Bruxelles Hospital, suspected as much as well. The rapid progression of Goldman's angioimmunoblastic T-cell lymphoma following the BNT162b2 mRNA booster was published as a peer-reviewed case report in the journal Frontiers of Medicine in November of 2021. Since its publication, the case study has been reviewed 383,411 times. While Poland and Goldman still seem to be champions of COVID-19 vaccines, many doctors who once advocated for universal COVID-19 vaccination have since changed their minds. British cardiologist Dr. Asim Malhotra initially encouraged the widespread use of COVID-19 vaccines, but then Malhotra's father passed away suddenly of cardiac arrest after receiving his shot. His father's death prompted Malhotra to begin researching the safety profile of the vaccines. Based on his finding, he no longer believes the theoretical benefits of COVID-19 vaccination outweigh the very real risks. Politicians are also becoming more vocal about ending vaccine mandates. December 7th, 2022, Senator Ron Johnson led a roundtable discussion called COVID-19 Vaccines: What They Are, How They Work, and Possible Causes of Injuries. The next day, the House voted for an $858 billion defense bill that included a repeal of the vaccine mandate for the military. Cardiologist Dr. Rosa Walker called to halt only the mRNA vaccines for young adults in favor of non-mRNA options. But a growing body of scientific literature, some of which has been retracted for political reasons, as well as state data and testimony from clinicians, has shown that none of the existing COVID-19 vaccines is as safe or as effective as advertised, which is something that we have reported on the Wells Report. At the same time, Omicron and other strains replacing the other more virulent SARS-CoV-2 variants, COVID-19 infection seems to be becoming milder. Dr. Malhotra said in a recent interview the vaccine is not completely safe, has unprecedented harms. He concluded in a peer-reviewed article published in the Journal of Insulin Resistance that a pause and reappraisal of global vaccine policies for COVID-19 is long overdue. Now, is there some form of information that we also need to keep track of? Because this sounds damning, doesn't it? Well, there's something else we need to keep in mind. We'll have that for you coming up in just a couple of moments. This is the Wells Report. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. A lot of people took a look at what was going on regarding the public health response to COVID-19 and voiced very serious concerns about it. Many doctors showed up and started talking about different ways of treating this disease, which ran afoul of the political imperative that people use the COVID-19 vaccinations, mRNA. This was something that was beyond the typical for the federal government, the FDA, and so on. And the reason is because these vaccines were rushed into research, rushed into manufacture, and essentially given to the people of the United States in an effort to stop what was a novel coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2. People were dying from it. They were dying at a serious rate, especially for a new virus. And so the government did what the government tries to do at every possible opportunity when something acute is happening. They tried to come up with a solution. The solution they came up with, Operation Warp Speed, developed 2 vaccines. A third would eventually appear. The vaccine that I took, Moderna, is an mRNA vaccine. I've had absolutely zero trouble that I'm aware of. I've had zero trouble. I feel fine. I felt fine. The only problem that I had was the second shot that was given to me by Joe the pile driver, who doesn't know how to give a vaccine. And okay, that wasn't the vaccine's fault. But after getting 2 vaccines and a booster, I got COVID. So there was obviously something wrong. Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on just a moment. I wonder what that was. Let me see. I've got a window open. Okay. Yeah. All right. So the window open was for the Aaron Dean verdict. And I had this open because I thought maybe there was going to be a report on it. And it turns out that it's a TV 21 promo. So there you go. Okay. So that's useless. So I can get rid of that. By the way, Aaron Dean, former Fort Worth police officer, found guilty of manslaughter. So the vaccines, in the words of Anthony Fauci, did not work overly well. In the words of Pfizer, they weren't tested to find out whether they would stop spread of the disease. Politicians overplayed their hand dramatically. Shut down the economy. Not everyone did this. Sweden didn't do it. Sweden said there's a virus out there. You need to wash your hands and make sure that you try to stay away from as many people as possible until it passes. They were finished with COVID-19 long before anybody else. But this is why, and I keep saying it, and I have to keep reinforcing this. Governments cannot handle health care. This Florida Surgeon General was censored by Twitter. Anybody that died in Florida that were Twitter users, anybody that died in Florida after he was censored without actually doing the research to find out whether he was wrong or not, anybody who died in Florida of myocarditis or arguably anywhere else in the country that would have seen that particular article, that responsibility rests with Twitter, along with all the doctors who were silenced for trying to treat COVID-19 by virtue of using remdesivir, hydroxyquin, so on and so on. This is the Wells Report. Back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. You can find us on the chat room. Chat room's available at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. If you are watching this on Patreon or on Rumble, first of all, thanks very much. I appreciate it. Let's see. That was Siri. Siri, hush. Thank you. By the way, I was just looking at my phone. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed down more than 750 points on recession fears. Weak retail sales data, increased estimates from the Fed, and the day before of how high interest rates may have to go, of how high interest rates may have to go, and central bank posturing in Europe all fed investor unease. The Dow Industrials fell 764 points today. Tech stocks were hit even harder. The NASDAQ fell around 3.2%. I guess what I probably ought to do is, under circumstances like this, I bring up the CNBC website, get some information here. I like the Wall Street Journal better, but it's a little dry. CNBC uses a lot more, they use a lot more pictures. Okay, so 764.13 off. That's the Dow Jones Industrial Average. The S&P down barely, almost 100 points, 99.57. That was down 2.49%. NASDAQ got hammered. They're down 360.36 points. That's 3.23%. Okay? This is one of those things about recession that we've been talking about. In order to tame inflation, you have to create a recession. Well, we're here. But the major indices are down. So there you go. All right. Politically, in the United States, we are led around by the nose way too much by people in politics. The idea that this nation spends so much time on politics in its life is evident of two things. One, the people involved in politics truly are narcissistic. And they just want to be in front of the parade, and they just want to have as much control over as many things as humanly possible. The other thing about it is that we are in a position where we have, as I've said before, elected the wrong people for too long. So we have this unbridled narcissism. And we also have a willingness to allow these people to walk away from the Constitution, whose sole purpose is to rein in federal government. And we haven't actually done that. We have allowed these people to essentially call the shots in our lives, and it's hurting us, all of us. And we must stop it. We spent the last hour and a half discussing it. Well, now, not only do we have a government that's out of control, we also have a mainstream media that's out of control because it's in league with the government. And I have two articles here from different places that tell different stories. This is a perfect example of why we do what we do on the Wells Report, which is double source virtually everything we discuss, unless we find articles that are exclusive to one particular news organization over another. And when we do that, it's unconfirmed. But we have two articles here about Donald Trump. One of them dovetails with something that we reported yesterday from USA Today. USA Today is going out of its way to report more damaging information about Donald Trump. Yesterday's news was about a USA Today Suffolk University poll. The problem with negative information coming from USA Today about Donald Trump is they've played that card way too many times. The negative reporting on Donald Trump is approaching 90% for USA Today. And that's awful. And so when they come up with something that is negative to Donald Trump, people are going, okay, it's USA Today. What do you expect? And they've done it again. Okay? These charts show how Trump's 2024 presidential bid is losing steam. Okay, so the actual bid itself what is it, 3-4 weeks old at this point? This is how the article is written. Donald Trump is in a slump. How creative. Support for the former president's 2024 presidential bid has declined as he faces significant midterm losses and courtroom setbacks, as an exclusive USA Today Suffolk University poll found. Among all voters, Trump has fallen further behind Joe Biden in a hypothetical rematch. Meanwhile, Republicans are leaning into Florida Governor Ron DeSantis as a possible 2024 presidential candidate. Here are the three charts that USA Today is referencing. Do you want Donald Trump to run for president in 2024? Yes or no? Yes. In July, 28%. In October, 27%. In December, 25%. That's arguably, certainly when it comes to October and December, that's within the margin of error. That's the number of people that say yes. The people who say no, in July, 65%. In October, 68%. In December, 69%. Once again, consistent. Undecided, 6, 4, and 6. Republicans are right-leaning voters are not sold on Trump's 2024 presidential bid, an exclusive USA Today Suffolk University poll found. By 2-1, GOP voters say they don't want Trump to run for president again, despite still supporting his policies. We pointed that out yesterday. The actual article in USA Today said they want Trump policies, but they don't want Trump. There are no Trump policies without Trump. Okay, that's an absurd, illogical statement. And I don't know how they got away with it. So that's article number one. It's a regurg of yesterday's USA Today Suffolk University poll. Now here's one from Fox News. This is an article from Fox News. Poll shows that Trump has the most support in a crowded GOP presidential primary. Trump tops DeSantis for the 2024 GOP nomination in a new poll of Republican voters. Here's the article. A new national poll indicates that a plurality of Republican voters still support former President Donald Trump for the 2024 presidential nomination, outperforming Florida Governor Ron DeSantis if the GOP 2024 primary race includes multiple candidates. 45% of Republican and Republican-leading independent voters questioned in an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist national poll released today said they'd support President Trump for the GOP nomination in a multi-candidate field. 33% favored DeSantis, 8% backed former President Mike Pence, 11% supported other potential candidates. Okay? 45%. That's not close. And this, by the way, again, is an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist national poll. Not exactly a harbinger or a champion of conservative causes, that particular group of polling individuals or institutions. The findings add context to a Wall Street Journal poll released yesterday that indicated DeSantis polling ahead of Trump in a hypothetical head-to-head matchup for the 2024 GOP nomination. The national survey also showed Republican primary voters could hold a slightly more favorable opinion of DeSantis than Trump. I don't know why they're saying that adds context to a Wall Street Journal poll that disagrees with the one that they're talking about. Okay, if you want to average the polls, just say it that way. All right, I mean, seriously, by the way, this is Fox News. While President Trump launched his third White House campaign a month ago, so 4 weeks, the field for the 2024 GOP nomination could become quite crowded by next year as a growing pool of Republican contenders continue to tease and make moves toward likely presidential runs in the aftermath of the midterm elections. American Conservative Union Chairman Mark Mattschlapp said, I think it's good for Trump to have competition. I actually think the more people that get in could be better for him. He loves a fight. The more people that get in that want to antagonize him, like Chris Christie or Larry Hogan, I think that's good for President Trump. Chris Christie is not going to get anywhere near Donald Trump. Chris Christie cannot fight with Donald Trump because Chris Christie has to fight a political fight. He can't fight a political fight with Donald Trump. Because as soon as you start playing politics with Donald Trump, he's going to start dictating facts. And as soon as you start dictating facts, what he's going to do is he's going to dictate better facts because he has a better record. So Chris Christie isn't going to have anything to do with this. I would suspect that at this particular moment, if indeed the field was set for the real campaign season that's coming up a year from now, for crying out loud, I would suspect that it'll be Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence, Donald Trump, and maybe Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis I know he's got an awful lot of real momentum, but I'm not exactly sure that he's going to run this next time. I know that sounds weird. I know. But it depends on how this all goes. I'm waiting to see whether Ron DeSantis is even going to run. Because once again, you got to remember something here. These politicians, especially Republicans, are going to be looking at this very, very carefully. Because they don't want to get bit again. They got bit in 2016 when the people of the United States heard Donald Trump saying things that actually helped their lives. There's nothing stopping President Trump from doing that again. I mean, and think about, and Karl Rove says that Donald Trump is going to lose. There's only one candidate that Joe Biden could beat. That would be Donald Trump. I don't think so. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination that's real. What I suggest is that, one, we keep this all in perspective. What I also suggest is this. We have to look at the actual dynamics of this political circumstance as opposed to what they keep trying to throw at us as reality. Donald Trump is in a slump. No, he's not. He's not he's not campaigning. He's not doing anything yet. He's waiting for people to get over the midterm elections. There are a lot of things going on right now that don't require anybody saying anything, which is why pretty much nobody is saying anything. Occasionally you'll hear Mike Pompeo talking a little bit. But not very much, not very many others. Ron DeSantis has been quiet because there's no need to speak. Mike Pence, after exploiting the latest commentary from Donald Trump, which Ron DeSantis did not do, by the way, he's also fallen silent. So once again, these pundits and politicians and so on, USA Today, they are proving that the mainstream media wants to play politics. And it also proves that they're lousy at it. They are just plain lousy at it. But we've got these polls. Yeah, well, polling in the last two election cycles has not exactly covered itself with glory, has it? What we have to do is this. We, the people of the United States, have to stop ourselves from being led around by the nose. It's essential that what we actually do is do our own thinking for ourselves. Because we are the only ones that have the right answers. Everybody else is guessing. Now, there are an awful lot of people that will read something in a newspaper and then believe it's gospel for all times and all people. Those are what Stalin called useful idiots. The rest of us need to pay very close attention to what's happening. The rest of us need to concentrate on finding a candidate that knows what the Constitution says and also knows what the Constitution means. That's what we have to find. As I told this story before. I was sitting on a stage with a bunch of talk radio luminaries. And the question was, who would I like to see as the American president? And I answered, I'd like to see an American as the American president. Not a politician, not a Republican, not a Democrat. We got one. And I also said that if you like this president, you're going to have to fight for him. And that's also true, isn't it? I also said that both Republicans and Democrats were going to be up against Donald Trump. And that's true as well, isn't it? You're listening to The Wells Report. Back with more coming up in just a moment. Stay there. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Articles are now coming out regarding former Fort Worth police officer Aaron Dean, now convicted of manslaughter in the shooting of Tatiana Jefferson. This from Edgar Sandoval. A white police officer who shot and killed a black woman when he fired a bullet through her bedroom window while responding to a call from a concerned neighbor was found guilty of manslaughter by a jury in Texas today. The jury in Fort Worth did not convict the officer, Aaron Dean, on the murder charge prosecutors had sought. The officer, Aaron Dean, now faces up to 20 years in prison after the 2-week trial that took place after years of delays. The October 2019 shooting occurred when Tatiana Jefferson, who had been playing video games with her 8-year-old nephew, heard a noise and grabbed her gun as she went to look out her bedroom window. Mr. Dean, who had been called by a neighbor who had reported open doors at the house late at night, yelled at Ms. Jefferson to put up her arms and immediately fired a single shot through her window. Zion Carr, Ms. Jefferson's nephew, said she started crying. He then said she collapsed near the window, moaning in pain, and then died. He said, "Is this a dream?" The shooting came long before two other high-profile cases, the deaths of Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky, and George Floyd in Minneapolis at the hands of white police officers that together sparked a national reckoning over race and policing. But Ms. Jefferson's death in Fort Worth brought to the surface a long-standing mistrust of the police in Black and Latino neighborhoods there and elsewhere in Texas. That's editorialization. That's that bias I keep telling you that I analyze out of news. Okay, that is not substantiated by this article. Okay, that's a mistake. Vigils turned into street protests at times led to tense confrontations between residents and local elected officials. Initially, Fort Worth authorities responded to the public outrage by acting swiftly. Fort Worth Police Department released the officer's body-worn camera and arrested Mr. Dean days later. But even as officers in the case of Ms. Floyd and Ms. Taylor were tried in court, the trial in Fort Worth remained in limbo for years after a series of delays caused by the coronavirus pandemic, personal tragedies, and legal maneuvers. After 2 years of legal back and forth, defense lawyers argued in legal filings the judge assigned to the case, David Hagerman, had shown bias against their team and treated them with anger and hostility. The judge was removed from the case over the summer. The trial had suffered another delay when it was announced that the lead defense counsel, Jim Lane, was diagnosed with a terminal illness. Mr. Lane died 1 day before jury selection was set to begin in late November. The trial finally began December 6th with a new judge, George Gallagher, 14 jurors, none of whom were black. And during the course of the trial, prosecutors argued Mr. Dean acted recklessly and used excessive force during a routine call when no one appeared to be in imminent danger. This is not a self-defense case. This is murder, said Ashley Diener, the assistant district attorney, talking to the jury. Miles Brissett, representing the officer, said his client was not able to discern Ms. Jefferson's gender or race from where he stood outside her window, and that he acted in self-defense only after he noticed a person holding a gun with a green laser mounted on it pointed directly at him. This is a tragic accident, said Mr. Brissett. Mr. Dean testified in his own defense, at one point admitted that the way he responded to the call could have been better, but he emphasized he was trained to stop the threat. At the time of the incident, the union that represented Mr. Dean, the Fort Worth Police Officers Association, said that he had never been the subject of investigation and was very shaken up by the shooting. The only notable entry in his personnel file was for a traffic accident, according to the union. He joined the department in April of 2018, 1 month after completing his classes at the police academy. Ms. Jefferson's young nephew was the first witness to take the stand. He recalled moving in not long before the shooting with his grandmother and his Aunt Tay, as he called her, because his mother was ill and could not care for him. His aunt, who graduated in 2014 from Xavier University of Louisiana with a degree in biology and sold medical pharmaceutical equipment, dreamed of going to medical school. But she had also had a playful side and loved playing video games with the boy. On the night of October 12, 2019, the two burned some hamburgers they were cooking and opened the doors to let the smoke out. Zion said during his testimony. He'd gone to bed and his aunt stayed up playing video games when a neighbor noticed the doors were open at around 2:30 in the morning, called a non-emergency number to report it. Mr. Dean and his partner, Carol Darch, who at the time were recent graduates of the police academy, responded to the call for an open structure, a vague classification that could mean anything. And from a burglary to burglary in progress to a report of an abandoned dwelling. It was not a welfare check, prosecutors said, which the case officers would knock on the house doors or call inside. By that point, Zion recalled in his testimony he had woken up and joined his aunt playing video games. That's when Ms. Jefferson heard a strange noise coming from the outside, reached for a gun that she kept in her purse. Manslaughter. That, by the way, is from the New York Times. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. It's hour number 2 in the books. Stick around. We got more. We will be telling you about some things that regard TikTok and more as we continue on this Thursday afternoon. Do not forget the traditional blues band. I'm a drummer in that band. We'll be playing tonight at the Dream Tacos in Bedford, Texas. Come and see us. It's a good band. You might like it. And the tacos are good too. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. Alrighty, friends. Thanks very much for being here with us. And don't forget, come for tacos tonight. It would be very, very good of you to do that. See you in a minute. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. We report the news here, honestly and truthfully. We also do a great deal of fairness here. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary. That's not the news. That's just my opinion. That opinion is debatable, and so we debate. So it's news, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. TikTok has been in the news. A lot of people are very, very concerned and exercised about TikTok. Check one, check two. Sibilance. LM drone bot was making fun of the way I was coming on the air here. Welcome to the broadcast. Good to have you here. TikTok is in the news. This, by the way, was something that came out of the New York Times yesterday. TikTok appears to be pushing videos about eating disorders and self-harm to 13-year-old users at a rapid clip. This, according to researchers reporting on Wednesday of this week, raising new concerns about the service's influences on young people. TikTok tailors a stream of short videos to people based on their interests, view times, and accounts they follow. It starts recommending content tied to eating disorders and self-harm to 13-year-olds within 30 minutes of them joining the platform, and sometimes in as little as 3 minutes, according to a report from the Center for Countering Digital Hate, which is a nonprofit. Who are these people? We don't know. We don't have any idea. Let's see. Once young users viewed and liked the content about body image and mental health, TikTok automatically recommended related videos to them every 39 seconds, according to researchers. To test the app, the researchers set up 8 accounts in August, posing as 13-year-olds, the minimum age for users in the United States, Britain, Australia, and Canada. The pathways into extreme content were so innocuous, Imran Ahmed, the chief executive of the Center for Countering Digital Hate, in an interview. Your eye might be caught by a video of an aspirational body in beautiful clothes, and very quickly, the algorithm realizes you're interested in body image. Some of the test accounts saw videos promoting junkorexia, a slang term for people with anorexia who only eat junk food, and others from users talking about suicide or featuring razor blades. The researchers found that many of the videos promoted eating disorders through hashtags using code words in an effort to avoid moderation, and that harmful videos sat alongside more positive ones about recovery. For example, people have used hashtag Ed Sheeran disorder to tag posts about eating disorders while appearing to talk about the pop singer. All right. So anyway, that is news from the New York Times regarding TikTok. There is other news. For example, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp has now banned state executive agencies from using TikTok, joining other Republican governors in taking action against the popular Chinese government-linked social media app. All right. So this article came out today at 1:53 Eastern Time, 12:53 in the Central Time Zone. So the ban, as Governor Brian Kemp joins other agencies, this is of Georgia, he sent a memo to all the heads of the Georgia state agencies outlining his concerns over the platform's links to the Chinese Communist Party and its potential threat to national security. The state of Georgia has a responsibility to prevent any attempt to access and infiltrate secure data and sensitive information by foreign adversaries, such as the CCCP or the CCP. The Chinese Communist Party poses an ever-present national security threat to the United States and the state of Georgia. As such, it's our duty to take action to preserve the safety and security of our state against the Chinese Communist Party and entities it controls, and other foreign cyber threats. Quote, effective immediately, all Georgia executive branch agencies, departments, divisions, bureaus, boards, authorities, and commissions are prohibited from using TikTok, WeChat, and Telegram on all systems and devices that are issued, owned, leased, or otherwise controlled by the state or used by state businesses. Kemp's action follows similar executive orders signed by the Republican governors who have called TikTok a cyber and national security threat. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum banned TikTok Tuesday. Maryland Governor Larry Hogan did so last week. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem banned state employees and contractors from accessing TikTok on state-owned devices. Telling Fox News earlier this month, the app jeopardizes the personal data of all South Dakotans and, by extension, America. She said that what China is doing with TikTok is comparable how pre-Elon Musk Twitter manipulated algorithms to advance a political narrative or censor dissenting narratives, but on a much larger scale. It's so much worse. They're our enemy. They hate us. This is why it's so important that other elected officials take action as well. Federal lawmakers have taken action in a rare showing of bipartisan consensus. The United States Senate unanimously passed a bill introduced by Republicans that would ban TikTok on government devices. Quote, TikTok is a Trojan horse for the Chinese Communist Party. It's a major security risk to the United States, and until it's forced to sever ties with China completely, it has no place on government devices. This, according to the bill sponsored by Josh Hawley of Missouri. States across the U.S. are banning TikTok on government devices. It's time for Joe Biden and the Democrats to help do the same. During a speech at the University of Michigan's Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy on December 2nd, FBI Director Christopher Wray said the Chinese officials have broad access to TikTok, allowing them to manipulate content, and if they want to, use it for influence operations. All of these things are in the hand of a government that doesn't share our values and that has a mission that's very much at odds with what's in the best interests of the United States. That should concern us, said FBI Director Wray. Georgia State Senator Jason Anavitarte, a Republican, has also introduced legislation that would completely ban TikTok in the Peach State, calling it malware produced by Communist China to influence our elections. While the app isn't operated directly by the Chinese government, its parent company is located in Beijing, and China's 2017 national intelligence law requires all citizens and businesses to assist in intelligence gathering and share any data with the Chinese government. TikTok pushed back against the bans. They did that yesterday, telling Fox Business in a statement, "We're disappointed that so many states are jumping on the political bandwagon to enact policies based on unfounded falsehoods about TikTok that will do nothing to advance the national security of the United States." By the way, in case you're wondering, TikTok is owned by the Chinese-based ByteDance, B-Y-T-E dance, ByteDance. All right. I have a lot of things to say regarding this. These are all my opinions. By all means, jump in if you feel like it. All I can say is this. One, the people that are essentially manipulating social media for political advantage are not the Communist Party of China. It currently is the Department of Justice, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the Director of National Intelligence. It's all those people. Those are the people that are manipulating our digital space for the sake of politics. We've got to go a long way before China is going to be able to affect us the way the United States government already does affect us. And once again, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is stuff we know. This is stuff we know. I don't know whether ByteDance receives a weekly audience by the secret police of the Communist Party of China. But I do know that at least for a while, American social media was having constant interactions with American government officials, some of which told them to not publish things or to censor things that ended up being true. There are an awful lot of people trying to take shots at TikTok. By the way, what got my attention on this and the reason why we're talking about it is Nancy Pelosi isn't exactly sure she's going to bring up this Senate bill that passed unanimously to ban TikTok on government devices. She's not sure she's going to bring that to the House of Representatives. Really? Yeah. Yeah, it's probably not a smart move. Yeah, they'll probably find a way to do that. They'll probably vote on that and so on and so forth. But what will that actually mean? I'm not a big fan of agreeing with the Chinese Communist Party, but I'm pretty sure that TikTok, I keep trying to call it TikTok. TikTok is not as big a national security threat as they keep talking about it as being. I'm not sure that that's the case. Like I said, I think it was day before yesterday. Mostly what they've got on TikTok is a whole bunch of very strange dancing. And what I would suggest is 10, 15 years from now, when these people that are dancing on TikTok videos, when they're running for public office and they're at odds with the aims of the Chinese Communist Party in the United States, maybe somebody from the CCP would contact this particular individual and say, hey, we've got pictures of you dancing on TikTok. And I'm pretty sure you don't want anybody to see it again. That's about the only thing that I can really think of. Because believe me, when it comes to people having information about us that they don't deserve to have, it's not the Chinese Communist Party that we have to worry about. It's the government of the United States that we have to worry about. Tell me I'm wrong. By all means. I need to know. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm wrong. Because I don't think I am at all. The criticisms that I throw at the Office of National Intelligence, that I throw at the FBI, the DOJ, is totally justified. It's just absolutely, totally justified. And so, okay, ban TikTok. But what are you going to do about the United States government? What are you going to do about the alliance between the FBI and Twitter? That's a hell of a lot more dangerous to us than TikTok is. Don't you think? Am I wrong? I don't believe I am. And that's only Twitter. What about Facebook? What did all those government agencies say to Facebook? What they say to Google and YouTube and all those other places? This is just the tip of the iceberg. And we would have never known if it wasn't for the fact that Elon Musk happens to believe in the First Amendment of the Constitution and wants to protect it. Yeah, so everybody is jumping up and down over TikTok. Actually, quite literally jumping up and down. But I don't see that as big a problem as these politicians that are rushing to exploit it. I don't see that as big a problem as they do. The problem, the government that I'm worried about, the totalitarian government I'm worried about, is the one that is getting its power from Washington, D.C. That's what I'm trying to get fixed. How about you? This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Thanks for joining us today, this Thursday. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Bob Del Giorno has just joined the fray. Bob, it's always great to hear from you, brother. How's your dad doing? How's everything going on? I worked with Bobby D when I lived in New Orleans, and we had some great times together. And God bless you, and thanks for joining us here on the Wells Report. Merry Christmas to you and yours as well. So Mark Greer points out that the administration is firing shots across Elon Musk's bow regarding his allowing formerly banned individual their voices back. You know what? That's good. Yeah, the way to protect free speech is to protect free speech. That's the way to do it. And you have to remember that all this garbage having to do with all this social media and so on and so forth, you know, this is one of those things where they're kind of picky. You know, they pick and choose. They're kind of fickle. You know, as long as social media is doing the bidding of the federal government, very much like they now accuse TikTok of doing for the Chinese Communist Party, there's no problem with social media at all. But, you know, if somebody actually has a real problem with the way social media is being manipulated in the United States by the government of the United States and actually does something about it, suddenly this guy's public enemy number one. So they're drawing the line in a bunch of funny places regarding social media. And oh, by the way, so everybody's on this bandwagon to get rid of TikTok, when the real problem when it comes to social media in the United States is the alliance between the FBI and social media in the United States. And it's not just the FBI, like I said. DHS, Office of National Intelligence, the Director of National Intelligence having weekly meetings with all these people from all these social media groups. And now the politicians are pointing at TikTok. My God, this is a problem. Oh, yeah? I need some fingers pointed at the FBI. That's what I need. I need some more fingers pointed at Mark Zuckerberg. I want more people to find out just exactly what the FBI and the Office of National Intelligence and DHS and all those government agencies were talking to YouTube and Google and Facebook and Instagram. I want to know what they were talking about. So forgive me if I just can't get exercised about whether or not TikTok is actually a national security threat to the people of the United States. Because we know for a fact that when it comes to social media, the enemy of the people of the United States is the FBI. And they are colluding. We almost throw a president out of office for colluding with Russia. All the while, the deep state is colluding with social media. Do you have any confusion as to what side of the political spectrum the deep state happens to be on? By the way, this is kind of fascinating. At least it's fascinating to me. So the Senate passes this anti-TikTok bill unanimously. Guess what Nancy Pelosi is not going to do? She's not going to commit to bringing the bill up on the House floor that would ban Chinese-owned video sharing TikTok on government devices. The bill, sponsored by Republican senators, would ban video sharing on government devices. When asked today whether the House would consider the legislation before the end of the session, Pelosi said she's reviewing the legislation and checking with the White House on the language. I'll take a look and see. I don't know if it will be on the agenda next week, but let's see. Politics to the very last, huh? Unbelievable. J.J. Austin, another superb broadcaster, says, yeah, TikTok's a diversion. No, TikTok's an example. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. Thanks for being with us. See you in a sec. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. A little more than 59 years ago, the 35th President of the United States was gunned down in Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. The assassination changed the world. It changed the way the people of the United States view its government. There have been endless discussions about what happened on that day in Dallas. There have been constant concerns about why so much of the information regarding that particular day ended up being classified and out of the reach of the people of the United States, and for what reason. What was interesting about that decision is that they wanted those papers to not be released while certain people were still alive, fueling the flames of controversy and conspiracy. Well, times have finally gotten to the point where these expirations of these papers are finally coming to the fore. The release of this information finally coming due. There are a lot of problems with the official explanation. 10 months of an investigation, the Warren Commission concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald assassinated Kennedy, that he'd acted entirely alone, that Jack Ruby had killed him and acted entirely alone. Kennedy was the 8th and most recent U.S. president to die in office, the 4th following Lincoln, Garfield, and McKinley to be assassinated. That wasn't the end of the story. In 1979, the United States House Select Committee on Assassinations agreed with the Warren Commission that Oswald's 3 rifle shots caused the injuries that Kennedy and Connally sustained. However, after analysis of a dictabelt audio recording, the United States House Select Committee on Assassinations, the HSCA, concluded that Kennedy was likely assassinated as the result of a conspiracy. The committee could not identify a second gunman or group involved in the possible conspiracy, although the HSCA concluded that audio analysis points to an existence of an additional gunshot and a high probability that 2 gunmen were firing at the president. That, by the way, was immediately debunked. But I heard the audio myself. And oh, by the way, the audio pointed to a rifle that makes a distinctive sound. .243 Winchester. And that is most assuredly not a Mannlicher Carcano that was being fired by Lee Harvey Oswald. I'll just leave that there. That's just one of the very strange things involved in that particular day. There are other things that point to another shooter. But like I said, I'll just leave that in abeyance. And the reason I bring it up is not to stir the pot, but to point out that when you hear a story, there's a ring of truth in it, if it's true. And if you hear a story that's absent that ring of truth, there's just something that's not right. And that's where the Kennedy assassination lies, in the psyche of the people of the United States, and has for nearly 60 years. And so it fell on the shoulders of President Joe Biden. Today, the president released a cache of once classified documents expected to shed light on the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said this has been a commitment of the president President Biden believes all information related to the Kennedy assassination should be released to the greatest extent possible, consistent with national security. The assassination occurred in broad daylight in Dallas, Texas. It was captured on film. What are the why the hedging of information that should be released to the greatest extent possible, consistent with national security? What national security issues could possibly be in place regarding a near 60-year-old assassination of anyone? See, that's another one of these things that just removes the ring of truth. It's not explained. It's not explainable. Corinne Jean-Pierre said that 97% of the Kennedy collection is available to the public following the release of 12,879 documents today by the National Archives and 1,491 documents a year ago today. An additional 515 documents have been withheld by the archives in full, and 2,543 documents have been partially withheld. Why? President Biden has ordered the acting archivist, Deborah Stidel Wall, to conduct a 6-month review of a subset of the remaining selected records to ensure they're also disclosed to the greatest extent possible. For decades, conspiracy theories have swirled around Kennedy's untimely death. The forthcoming files could provide clarity, but I wouldn't necessarily hold my breath. The focus of the document drop is the CIA's 80-volume personality file for Lee Harvey Oswald, the man who assassinated Kennedy. The file includes information the CIA gathered on Oswald before and after the Kennedy attack, information on his trip to Mexico City, and a CIA veteran's apparent conflict of interest will also likely be released. What will not be revealed? Documents regarding Kennedy's death will remain sealed, though efforts to increase transparency are ongoing. This according to Politico. At President Biden's request, transparency plans will also be released today by agencies withholding related documents that explain generally the kinds of files that have not been released and why. Among the files that are released, don't expect major bombshells. This from USA Today. White House officials reportedly indicate no conspiracy theories like a different gunman or the reveal of a broader conspiracy to kill Kennedy will be revealed today. What did the last files reveal? Not much. One file included information about a crank call made to Australia's U.S. Navy attaché a year before President Kennedy's death about an alleged plot against the president by the Soviet Union. This according to Politico. Another file was titled Plots to Assassinate Castro, referring to then Cuban President Fidel Castro. Experts weren't impressed. Jefferson Morley, a veteran journalist and author of 3 books on the Central Intelligence Agency in the 60s, called the release a sham at the time. For some JFK historians, the 2021 drop was underwhelming, prompting criticism of the Biden administration. According to the law, all JFK records were supposed to be made available within 25 years with no exceptions. But this law, the President John F. Kennedy Assassination Records Collection Act of 1992, also allows for postponement at the discretion of the president. And so, even as we struggle for transparency of this government, even as we struggle for that, there are still holes in the story. There's still holes in the story. And unfortunately, we're going to have to wait for more information before we'll ever have those gaps filled. And I don't know why it's so secret. I just don't know why it was so secret. I don't know why it needs to be. By the way, the information on the USA Today article about the 25 years is incorrect. It was 50 years, 50 years. That information was held up. I know I did the research because I did a lot of research on that. And in that research, I discovered that anything that could possibly be changed indeed was. There's some very convincing stories about the alteration of the Zapruder film, for example. Very convincing. But there are certain things that are out there that tell a much different story than what we've been told. And why these things haven't been put together, I just don't know. Like a lot of other people that are interested in this, I've watched all of the recreation stories and so on and so on. Especially one by ABC News. And in that particular story, one of the inconsistencies, and like I said, this is an open source. One of the inconsistencies was an X-ray of the president's head showing a completely different wound pattern than what was explained in the Warren Commission. And if you go back through it and you look at it again, you'll say, how did they manage to allow that to go through? There are just things that are out there that nobody's thinking about, that tell a completely different story. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the things that we know to be true. Just the basic things. He was in a particular car, at a particular place, at a particular moment in history, when gunfire rang out, and the president ended up dead. And if you just look at the basics of all of that, still doesn't add up from that point. What happened afterwards? It goes from an exponential oddness to improbability to why aren't they just telling us the truth? I wonder if they ever will. I don't know. I hope that people around aren't expecting something from the JFK files like in the Oliver Stone movie JFK, because the movie is composed of debunked theories and fiction. It's the Oliver Stone movie is flawed. But then again, so are a lot of them. I mean, there are a lot of them. You know, I'm still suspicious about who was behind it and so on and so forth. And yeah, I suppose. But I'm not worried so much about that. I'm a tactical guy. You look at the tactical aspects of it. There are just too many things going on that are not explained. Too many things happening within the 3-minute window. If you go back to just the 3 minutes, and if you believe that everything that you know has probably been altered, and just go back to the things that can't be altered, you'll see a much different story. And all that stuff's out in the open. Why hasn't anybody put it together? I do have a thought on that. I'm exceedingly nervous discussing this. Because like I said, I did a whole bunch of research on it. And when I moved to Dallas, Texas, I actually moved to Fort Worth, it took me 2 years to go to that plaza. Because I was afraid of what I was going to find there. And when I went into that plaza, what I was afraid of was actually there. And I kept myself composed until I was in my car and I drove myself away and I burst into tears. And so the reason why I think that people don't actually talk about this is because they're afraid. But what are we afraid of? That's the real story. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. Courtney Bannock is a police officer from Tavares, Florida. She was taking part in a routine traffic stop. And what ended up happening is that she ended up in a position where she was searching the car and the contents therein. She found a dollar bill. She partially opened it because she could feel something inside it. I noticed a white powdery substance. I've dealt with fentanyl many times before, so I believe that's what it was. I wrapped it back up. I put it in there. We kind of sealed it away and went on from there. After searching the vehicle and the occupants, she found the dollar bill with the drug inside. She alerted two officers that were with her at the scene of her finding. I really don't remember much of the incident, but I do know that when I found the narcotics, it was wrapped up in a dollar bill. So I think I was trying to explain to them where exactly the drugs I believed I was exposed to at the time was out, so they were aware, so it didn't happen to them as well. After finding the dollar bill, Bannock said they decided to take the drugs back to the police department to be tested since the strong winds could potentially endanger her and other officers dealing with the drug. When I went to notify dispatch that we were actually going to head to the police department, I started to feel very lightheaded, and I couldn't really talk. I felt like I was choking. After watching the body cam, I could hear myself. I was choking, but I remember consciously being aware that I did not think I was overdosing. It never went through my mind at the time. One police officer's body cam footage showed her collapsing, which prompted the officers to administer 3 doses of Narcan to reverse the poisoning. That's what saved her life. Although she's thankful to be alive, she warned the dangerous trend is all but rare in her Florida community as fentanyl crisis continues to derail public safety. We respond to overdoses most every shift, and if it's not every shift, it's every other we deal with that. I would say that I see fentanyl overdoses in many people's possessions almost weekly here. I don't know whether you saw the video, but that's what it looks like when people die. And her fellow officers saved her. And fentanyl keeps coming across the border into the state of Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California, every single day. The statistics are holding steady. The statistics are that 302 people die every month. 302 people die every day of fentanyl coming into this nation. And yet, the border of Mexico and the United States is still open. Every 10 days, we lose the same number of people that died in the 9/11 attacks. This is a chemical. It is a chemical poison. We know where it comes from. And yet the other day, I guess it was yesterday, the Biden administration sued the state of Arizona for piling up shipping containers in the breaches of the fencing that allow the cartels and all these people to bring this poison into the United States. You know, we spend an awful lot of time today. Today was a situation where we find and we discussed in several different ways how our government is just simply untruthful with us. How they are operating at cross purposes with the people of the United States. I mean, we talked about the way the CDC went ahead and suppressed weapons defense data from the people of the United States. Far more people defend themselves with weapons than the CDC wanted anybody to know, courtesy of gun control advocates trying to tell a different story and co-opting the CDC to cooperate. We've talked about the federal government being dragged inch by inch into giving us information about the loss of the 35th president of the United States. And even now, the hedging, the protection, the concern, the fear is evident in the simple reporting of the story. We spend a lot of time talking about all that stuff. But how many Americans have to die because we won't close the border? How is it that the federal government of the United States, complicit in the deaths of 302 people every single day because of one particular drug that comes into the nation across the southern border, Why is it that the government of the United States finds any reason whatsoever to leave that border open? That border needs to be sealed. It needs to be patrolled. It needs to be closed. And if it's possible that there could be fentanyl in that car, it needs to be searched. And we need to stop playing around with this. And I wonder why the government won't do that, why they keep playing around with it. This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Share it with your friends, and I'll see you again tomorrow. All right, beloved friends. Let's see. What do we got here? The deep state has two faces, conservative and liberal. No, it only has one face. Let's see. Warren Commission was one piece of crap. Well, it may be one piece of crap, but it's the only piece of crap we have. Jay Randall, next time we talk, I'll discuss your idea with you. I'll tell you something that you may need that I don't think you know. Let's see what else is going on. Have a good show tonight at Dream Tacos. Thank you very much. I will. And break a leg tonight, says Mike. Thanks, brother. Thank you so much. I'll be there tonight, but we have anniversary plans. That's fine. Okay, that'll be absolutely wonderful. I'll look forward to seeing you, and I'll look forward to wishing you happy anniversary. Okay. All right, that's all I got. God bless all y'all. I got to go get ready. I'm wearing my concert shirt. It's also black, so I don't look like I'm a sweat ball. So I'll talk to you later, okay?